I used to think life couldn't change overnight. That was before my family went bankrupt. One day, I was the son of the Callahan Group's CEO. The next, I was standing outside our mansion while men in dark suits carried out everything we owned. The air smelled like rain and dust, and each item that left our gate felt like a piece of my life being stripped away. My father stood frozen, staring at the foreclosure notice nailed to our door. His once proud shoulders slumped forward like an old man who'd finally lost his war. My mother's hand trembled as she held onto his arm, her diamond bracelet, the last thing she had left, catching the dying sunlight. "Dad, there has to be something we can do," I whispered, but my voice barely carried over the sound of thunder. He didn't look at me. His voice was hollow when he answered. "It's over, Liam. The company's gone. We've lost everything." The Callahan Empire, built over 3 generations, had crumbled in less than a week. Rumors spread like wildfire. Bad investments, insider deals, betrayal. I didn't know what was true anymore. All I knew was that our rival, Ethan Blackwell, had bought the company at auction that very morning. Ethan. Just hearing his name made my stomach twist. He wasn't just any businessman. He was ruthless, sharp, and devastatingly calculated. The kind of man who smiled while signing people's destruction papers. Once, long ago, we'd been classmates in university. He'd been brilliant and arrogant, but charming enough to make anyone believe in him, including me. We'd shared one kiss, a stupid, reckless kiss during a drunken night we both pretended never happened. And then, without warning, he vanished from my life. Until now. The next afternoon, I received a call. "Mr. Blackwell requests your presence. 7 p.m. at Blackwell Tower. Don't be late." His assistant didn't even wait for me to respond. I almost didn't go, but we were drowning, and I needed answers. Maybe I could plead with him. Maybe there was still something I could do to protect my parents. By 7, I was standing in front of Blackwell Tower, a 40-story building that gleamed like a shard of ice against the night sky. Inside, everything screamed luxury, marble floors, glass elevators, and people who walked like they owned the world. And there, behind a massive glass desk on the top floor, sat Ethan Blackwell. He hadn't changed much, yet somehow he looked even more dangerous. His dark hair was slicked back, his black suit tailored perfectly to his tall frame. Those grey eyes, sharp and unreadable, lifted to meet mine. "Liam Callahan," he said, leaning back in his chair like he'd been expecting me all along. "I was wondering when you'd show up." I swallowed hard. "You bought my father's company." "I did." He smirked. "It was a good deal. Practically a steal." "Why?" I demanded, stepping closer. "You had no reason to destroy us." "My father." "Your father ruined mine." His voice was cold enough to freeze the air. 10 years ago, his so-called partnership drove my family into bankruptcy. I grew up watching my parents beg, while yours celebrated their profits. That's not true. "Oh, but it is." He stood, walking around the desk until he was right in front of me. His presence filled the room like a storm. "You see, I don't forget betrayal, Liam. I collect it. And now, I own you." My pulse spiked. "You what?" His lips curved into something between a smile and a threat. "I'll make you a deal. Your family's debt, all of it, wiped clean. But in return, you'll give me what I want." I took a step back. "And what do you want, Ethan?" He paused, his gaze dragging slowly over me, then said quietly, "You. As my lover." For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. "What did you just say?" "I need a lover for the media. Someone believable. I have investors who only trust me if I appear settled. And you," he brushed past me, his voice brushing my ear, "are already used to playing the part of perfection." I laughed bitterly. "You're insane." "Maybe. But you're desperate." He leaned against his desk again, watching me like a cat studying a trapped mouse. "You can walk out of here and watch your parents lose everything. Or you can stay and sign the contract. The choice is yours." I wanted to hit him. Scream. Anything. But when I thought of my father's hollow eyes, my mother's trembling hands, I froze. 6 months, I whispered. "No more." He smiled, a real smile this time, cruel and victorious. 6 months. Starting now. The contract was printed before I could change my mind. Every line was legal, clean, binding. When I signed my name, it felt like sealing my own fate. Ethan poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed me one. "To new beginnings," he said. I didn't drink. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" He shrugged. "Maybe a little." I slammed the glass onto his desk. "You're using me to hurt my family." He tilted his head. "You say that like it isn't exactly what your father did to mine." I turned to leave, but he caught my wrist. His grip was firm, but not painful, just enough to stop me. When I met his eyes, for a brief second, I saw something there, not hatred. Not victory. Something darker, sadder. But then it was gone. "Welcome to my world, Callahan," he murmured, voice low and dangerous. "Try not to fall in love." That night, I moved into his penthouse. The building overlooked the entire city, glittering lights that felt 1,000 miles away from the darkness inside me. Ethan's home was everything mine used to be. Elegant, expensive, perfect. But it was cold. Like him. He showed me to a guest room, but halfway through, he smirked and said, "No. Lovers share a room, don't they?" I wanted to argue, but the look in his eyes dared me to. So I said nothing. When I finally lay in bed that night, he was already on the other side, scrolling through his phone. The silence between us was deafening. I thought I'd made a deal with the devil. But as I stared at the city lights reflecting in the glass, I wondered what kind of devil needed to fake love to survive. The next morning, the headlines exploded. Billionaire Ethan Blackwell confirms secret relationship with former heir Liam Callahan. From bankruptcy to billionaire's boyfriend, inside their shocking love story. The internet believed every word. My phone buzzed non-stop with messages, reporters, and people pretending to care. My mother called in tears, asking if it was true. My father didn't speak at all. When I confronted Ethan, he only shrugged. "You signed the contract, remember? This is part of the job." "Job," I repeated. "Is that what this is to you?" He looked at me with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "It's business, Liam. Everything is." But that night, when I caught him standing alone on the balcony, the city wind brushing through his hair, he didn't look like a man who had won. He looked lost. And for a moment, just one, I wondered if beneath all that arrogance and control, there was still the boy I once knew. The one who had kissed me and whispered that he wanted forever. Maybe he'd forgotten that night. But I hadn't. And something told me. This fake relationship was about to get far more real than either of us ever planned. The first morning in Ethan Blackwell's penthouse felt like waking up in someone else's life. Everything was too perfect. The scent of polished wood, the expensive sheets that smelled faintly of cedar and cologne, and the sunlight spilling through the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the entire city. I sat on the edge of the massive bed, trying to remember how I'd ended up there. The contract. The lies. The headlines. Every time I blinked, I saw Ethan's smirk from the night before. The way he said, "Welcome to my world." I should have felt angry. I should have hated him. Instead, I felt trapped. A soft knock on the door broke the silence. A woman in a black uniform stepped in, her posture stiff. "Good morning, Mr. Callahan. Mr. Blackwell asked me to remind you that breakfast is served at 8. You'll find your schedule on the table." "My schedule?" I repeated, confused. She nodded once, pointing at a sleek black folder on the bedside table before leaving. Inside, every hour of my day was listed, from breakfast to wardrobe fittings to fake charity appearances. Ethan had planned everything down to the minute. And at the bottom, in neat handwriting, one line stood out. "Remember, appear in love." By the time I reached the dining area, Ethan was already there, dressed in another impossibly sharp suit, flipping through his tablet. The table was covered in everything from pancakes to fruit platters, but he wasn't eating. "Good morning," I said, my voice hesitant. He didn't look up. "You're late." "It's 8:05. "Then you're 5 minutes late." I bit back a sigh and sat opposite him. The silence stretched until he finally spoke again. "Rule number 1, he said, setting down his tablet. "You'll follow the schedule I give you. No questions." I frowned. "You mean you control my entire day now?" He gave a half smile. "That's how relationships work, don't they? A little control, a little surrender. That's not a relationship. That's prison." He ignored me and continued. "Rule number 2, when we're in public, you'll stay close to me. Touch my arm, smile when I do, and never contradict me in front of the press." I pushed my plate away. "So, I'm just your decoration?" He looked up at me finally, his eyes like cold steel. "No, Liam. You're my illusion." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. His words cut sharper than I expected. I wanted to remind him that I wasn't his enemy, that I was only here because of my family. But before I could, he leaned back, the arrogance returning to his voice. "Third rule," he said softly. "Don't fall for me." That did it. I stood. "You're unbelievable." "Sit down, Liam." I didn't. "You really think I'd ever fall for someone like you?" His lips curved. "You already did once. Remember?" My heart skipped. He remembered. That night in university, the kiss. The one we both swore to forget. I turned away, my face burning. That was a mistake. He chuckled quietly. We'll see. That afternoon, we had our first public appearance together, a charity gala. By the time I stepped out of the dressing room in my fitted tuxedo, Ethan was waiting by the door, his gaze sweeping over me slowly. You clean up well, he said. Almost convincing. I'm not here to impress you. He smirked. You might want to try harder then. The world thinks we're in love. I wanted to reply, but then he offered his arm. A gesture that looked gentle, almost romantic, if not for the sharp edge in his smile. Let's give them a show, he said. The flash of cameras hit us the moment we stepped out of the car. Mr. Blackwell, is it true you're dating Liam Callahan? How long have you two been together? Wedding plans soon? Ethan's hand slipped around my waist. Smile, he whispered between his teeth. I forced myself to smile as microphones were pushed toward us. Ethan answered every question effortlessly. Charming, confident, every word perfectly calculated. He made it sound like we were deeply in love, like we'd been together for years. And somehow, he made it look real. At one point, he turned toward me, his hand resting lightly on the back of my neck. He's the best thing that's happened to me, he said to the reporters, his voice steady. I almost forgot it was a lie. Almost. Until he leaned down, and before I could react, his lips brushed mine. The world froze. The cameras exploded in flashes. For everyone else, it was a sweet public kiss. For me, it was something else entirely, electric, confusing, too real. When the reporters finally backed away, I whispered, that wasn't in the contract. He smirked. Adaptability is part of the job. My heart was still racing. You really enjoy this game, don't you? Only when I win, he said quietly. That night, after the gala, I stormed into the penthouse. You had no right to kiss me like that. Ethan followed me inside, calm as ever. Relax, Liam. You're acting like it meant something. It didn't. I snapped, too quickly, too defensively. He raised an eyebrow. Then why are you shaking? I hated that he noticed. I hated even more that he was right. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. Here's the thing about pretending, he said. Do it long enough, and you start to forget it's not real. Something in his tone made me falter. There was no mockery, no cold edge, just a quiet kind of sadness. Good night, Liam, he whispered, brushing past me toward his room. I stood there long after he was gone, my heart thudding painfully in my chest. Days turned into weeks. We attended events, did interviews, smiled for cameras, always side by side. And though everything between us was supposed to be fake, there were moments that didn't feel fake at all. Like the night I got caught in the rain after a shoot, and Ethan showed up without a word, wrapping his jacket around my shoulders. Or the morning he caught me asleep on the couch, and I woke to find a blanket covering me. He pretended not to care, but his actions told a different story. And I hated myself for noticing. Then one evening, I overheard something that made my blood run cold. Ethan was on the phone in his office, his voice low and serious. Yes, I know the Callahans still have the offshore accounts. Don't worry. By the time I'm done, they won't have a single cent left. I froze behind the door. My chest tightened. So that was it. This wasn't just about appearances. He was still after my family, still planning to destroy what little we had left. The kind gestures, the stolen glances, the quiet moments, they were all part of his manipulation. I felt sick. Before he could notice me, I slipped back to my room, my mind spinning. That night, as I stared at the city lights outside the window, one thought echoed in my head. I thought I understood the rules of his game. But the real rule was never to trust Ethan Blackwell. And for the first time, I realized that the biggest danger wasn't losing my family. It was losing myself to a man who didn't believe in love at all. I couldn't sleep that night. No matter how tightly I shut my eyes, Ethan's voice echoed in my head, cold, ruthless, calculating. By the time I'm done, they won't have a single cent left. The words looped in my mind like a cruel melody. It wasn't just business. He was planning to destroy my family completely. The man I'd been forced to call my lover wasn't saving us. He was finishing what he'd started, one cruel game at a time. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the city lights far below, my chest burning. I wanted to believe there was still some part of him that cared, that all those quiet gestures, the blanket, the jacket, the kiss, meant something. But maybe I was just a fool caught in his trap. By morning, my decision was made. I had to know the truth. Ethan left early for a meeting downtown. I waited until I heard the elevator doors close before sneaking into his office. His space was as immaculate as he was, all glass, black marble, and cold order. His scent still lingered, expensive cologne, and something faintly smoky. I began searching through his desk. Most of the drawers were locked, but one wasn't. Inside, I found files, papers, photos, all stamped with the Callahan name. My heart sank as I flipped through them. Copies of old contracts, debt records, even pictures of my father shaking hands with men I didn't recognize. Then, at the bottom of the pile, I found an envelope marked confidential. Inside was a single photograph. It showed my father standing beside Ethan's father, both smiling in front of a new factory site. But scribbled across the corner, in Ethan's handwriting, were the words. The day it all began. Something about it didn't fit. The date printed on the photo, 10 years ago, was months before my father supposedly betrayed his business partners. I frowned, flipping through more papers until I found something stranger. A financial report from that same year, signed not by my father, but by a man named Victor Blackwell, Ethan's uncle. A chill ran down my spine. I didn't know much about him, only that he'd vanished after the Blackwell family's collapse. But the document showed that Victor had authorized several illegal fund transfers under the Callahan name. It wasn't my father who'd stolen the money. It was Ethan's uncle. The truth hit me like a punch to the chest. Ethan's revenge was built on a lie. I didn't have time to think before the office door clicked open. Looking for something, Liam? Ethan's voice froze me where I stood. He was leaning casually against the doorframe, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a half-empty cup of coffee. His eyes, however, were anything but calm. I swallowed. I was just going through my private files, he finished for me, walking slowly closer. Curiosity can be dangerous. He stopped a few feet away, gaze fixed on the papers in my hand. Give those to me. No, my voice trembled, but I didn't back down. You've been blaming my father for something he didn't do. His eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Your uncle, Victor. He's the one who stole the money. I found the documents, Ethan. You've been wrong this whole time. He froze. For the first time since I'd met him, I saw something flicker across his face, confusion, disbelief. You're lying, he said flatly. I'm not. Look for yourself. I held out the papers. Your uncle used our company's accounts to cover his own tracks. He framed my father. He snatched the files from my hand and scanned them quickly. His jaw tightened. Where did you get these? From your own drawer. For a long moment, silence filled the room. The air felt heavy, like a storm waiting to break. When he finally looked up, there was something broken in his eyes. If this is true, he murmured, voice low, then everything I did, everything you did was for nothing. I finished bitterly. You ruined my family. You humiliated my father. You used me. His hand dropped to his side. Liam, I didn't know. You didn't care to know, I said, my voice cracking. You just wanted revenge. You didn't even stop to ask if you were right. He took a step toward me, his expression pained. I swear Don't, I whispered. Don't touch me. He stopped mid-step. For a moment, all I heard was the faint hum of the city below us. Then I turned and walked past him. My chest ached so hard I could barely breathe. Liam, he called after me, but I didn't look back. This time, I wasn't his pawn. I packed my things that night. There was nothing to take, really. Just a few clothes and the contract I'd torn to shreds before stuffing it into the trash. When the elevator doors closed behind me, I felt like I could finally breathe again. But the relief didn't last. Because as much as I hated him, a part of me still hurt. Not because of his cruelty, but because somewhere in the middle of all the lies, I'd started to care. That was the worst betrayal of all. For days, I didn't hear from him. My parents welcomed me home quietly, not asking for details. I tried to sleep, to forget, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, the hurt, the anger, the disbelief. Then one evening, while watching the news, I froze. The headline read, Blackwell Enterprises under investigation. Illegal transactions tied to former board member, Victor Blackwell, Ethan's uncle. I turned up the volume. The reporter explained how Richard had siphoned company funds and forged documents, framing the Callahans years ago. Proof had surfaced, the same document I'd shown Ethan. The truth was out. My heart raced as the reporter added. Sources say CEO Ethan Blackwell is cooperating with authorities and has stepped down temporarily to handle family matters. That's when I realized Ethan must have found the truth. And for the first time since leaving his penthouse, I cried. Not from pain, but from the heavy, tangled relief of knowing I hadn't imagined everything. Still, a part of me ached. Because even if he now knew the truth, he'd already destroyed us. Days passed. Then weeks. Each morning felt the same. Empty, quiet, colorless. My parents were starting to smile again, talking about reopening a smaller branch of the company, but I could barely focus. Every time I tried to be happy for them, Ethan's voice echoed in my mind. You're only here because I paid you to be. No matter how many times I told myself to forget, it kept replaying like a wound that refused to close. I deleted his number, blocked his calls, and avoided any news about him. But the world didn't let me forget. Ethan Blackwell's face was everywhere. On the news, on social media, in every headline about the scandal surrounding his uncle. Apparently, after the truth came out, Ethan had fired most of his board. He'd lost several investors. His empire was starting to crack. Part of me wanted to feel satisfied. After all, he'd hurt me, humiliated my family, and accused my father of crimes he didn't commit. But I didn't feel happy. I just felt tired. It was raining that night. The kind of rain that seemed to wash the city clean, cold, endless, unforgiving. I was in my room, staring at the faint reflection of myself in the window, when the doorbell rang. I ignored it at first. Then it rang again, louder this time. When I opened the door, my heart nearly stopped. Ethan stood there, soaked to the bone. His usually sleek black hair clung to his forehead, and his white shirt was half transparent from the rain. His eyes, those sharp, commanding eyes, looked lost. Liam, he breathed, his voice breaking on my name. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I wanted to slam the door, to protect myself from the ache that was rushing back, but my body refused to move. What are you doing here? I finally managed. He swallowed hard, his jaw trembling slightly. I needed to see you. You shouldn't be here, I said quietly. You got what you wanted, remember? He flinched like I'd hit him. Then he stepped forward, his voice trembling. No, I didn't. I thought revenge would make me feel better, but it didn't. It destroyed me. The sound of rain filled the silence between us. I could see the guilt written all over him, the exhaustion in his eyes. For the first time since I met Ethan Blackwell, he didn't look like a billionaire. He looked human. Ethan, I said, trying to steady my voice, you said terrible things to me. You made me feel like I was nothing. I know, he whispered, his voice cracking. And I hate myself for it. I didn't trust you because I didn't trust anyone. I let my anger blind me, and I ended up hurting the only person who saw me for more than my name. He ran a shaky hand through his wet hair, his chest rising and falling. I found the documents you showed me. You were right, Liam. My uncle did everything. My father, he died hating the wrong man. And I took it out on you. Tears burned my eyes. I turned away, but he stepped closer, gently grabbing my wrist. His touch was cold from the rain, but it made my heart skip anyway. Please, he said, voice low. You don't have to forgive me. I just needed you to know the truth. I wanted to tell him to leave, to stop opening wounds I'd just started to heal. But when I looked up at him, his expression wasn't the mask of arrogance I'd grown used to. It was broken, desperate, real. Why now? I asked quietly. After everything? He hesitated. Because I realized something when you left. I didn't just lose my revenge. I lost the one person who made me feel alive. I stared at him, trying to steady my breathing. The part of me that still loved him wanted to believe every word. The part that remembered his cruelty wanted to shut him out. You think showing up here will fix everything? I asked bitterly. He shook his head slowly. No, I know I can't fix what I did overnight. But I want to try, not because I owe you, but because I love you. The words hung in the air like thunder. I blinked at him. You what? He took another step forward, his voice trembling. I love you, Liam. I tried to fight it. I told myself it was just the contract, the act, but it wasn't. Somewhere between pretending to hold your hand and watching you sleep on my couch, when you thought I wasn't looking, it became real. The tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over. I pressed my hand to my mouth, choking on the mess of emotions flooding through me. Pain, longing, disbelief, hope. Ethan reached up, his hand hovering near my face like he wasn't sure he had the right to touch me anymore. I don't expect you to take me back, he said softly. But please, let me prove I can be better. I stared at him, his voice trembling, his eyes glistening with rain and regret. For a long moment, I said nothing. Then I stepped aside. Come in, I whispered. He froze, then nodded and stepped inside. Water dripped from his clothes onto the floor, but I didn't care. I handed him a towel, and he took it with a shaky smile. Thank you, he said quietly. We sat opposite each other in silence, the sound of rain filling the gaps between us. I don't know if I can trust you again, I admitted finally. You hurt me too much. He nodded. I know. I'll earn it back, no matter how long it takes. Something about his tone, the sincerity in it, made my chest ache. He wasn't the cold billionaire who bought my family's company anymore. He was just a man standing in the ruins of his own mistakes, trying to rebuild. After a long pause, I whispered, You said you love me. Say it again. He looked at me, eyes glassy. I love you, Liam. The words sounded like a confession and a promise all at once. I took a deep breath. Then prove it. He smiled faintly, the first real smile I'd seen from him in weeks. I will. As he reached for my hand, I didn't pull away this time. His fingers were still cold, but they trembled with warmth. For the first time, it didn't feel like I was holding on to a contract. It felt like I was holding on to the truth. That night, when Ethan finally left, I stood by the window and watched the rain fade to a gentle drizzle. The city lights reflected in the puddles like tiny stars. Maybe forgiveness wouldn't come easily. Maybe we were still too broken. But for the first time since it all began, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. It's been 6 months since that night. 6 months since Ethan showed up at my door, drenched in rain and regret. A lot has changed since then. The world no longer sees us as the fake couple who dominated headlines, or the billionaire and the bankrupt heir trapped in a contract. The tabloids eventually moved on to newer scandals, but for us, the real story began after the cameras stopped flashing. Ethan kept his word. He spent those months rebuilding his company from the ground up, this time without lies, without manipulation. He returned the Callahan Company shares he had taken, and even helped my father restart our business. Every deal he made was transparent, every action deliberate, almost as if he was trying to undo every wrong he'd ever done. And he never once pressured me to come back. He called sometimes, never more than once a week, just to ask how I was. Sometimes we talked about business, sometimes about nothing at all. But every time, he ended with the same soft words. I'll wait, Liam. No contracts this time. Just me. At first, I didn't know if I could ever love him again. My trust had been broken too deeply. But slowly, through every quiet gesture, he began to rebuild what he'd destroyed. One day, he showed up at my father's office, not with bodyguards or an air of superiority, but with a box of old documents. These are from my father's archive, he said gently. Proof that your dad was innocent. I thought you might want to keep them. My father stared at him for a long time, then stood up and offered his hand. We both lost a lot, Ethan, he said. Let's not lose any more. It was the first time I saw Ethan cry. That moment changed something in me. For the first time, I saw him not as the man who ruined us, but as the man who was finally learning what love and forgiveness truly meant. Tonight, he called again. His voice was steady but nervous. Can you meet me? Just one last time. At the old Callahan building. My heart skipped. That place had once been a symbol of everything we'd lost. Our pride, our legacy, our home. But something in his tone told me it wouldn't be painful this time. I agreed. When I arrived, the building looked completely different. The broken glass had been replaced, the rusted sign polished. The lobby lights glowed softly, reflecting off marble floors. And there he was, standing near the grand staircase, wearing a black suit, no tie, his hair slightly tousled. He looked up the moment he saw me, and for once, there was no arrogance in his expression. Only peace. Liam, he said softly. I walked closer, my footsteps echoing in the empty hall. You fixed this place. He smiled faintly. We fixed it. It's ours now, jointly owned. I wanted to bring it back, not as a trophy, but as a home. I blinked, taken aback. Ours? He nodded. Your family and mine built it. It only felt right to rebuild it together. I felt a lump form in my throat. Before I could speak, he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a folded piece of paper. My heart nearly stopped when I saw what it was. It was the contract. The one we both signed months ago. The deal that started everything. He unfolded it carefully and tore it down the middle, the sound crisp and final. No more contracts, he said quietly. No conditions. No pretending. Just us. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. He took a hesitant step closer. Liam, I know I've made unforgivable mistakes. I hurt you in ways I'll regret for the rest of my life. But if you'll let me, I want to spend every day making it right. Not as your boss or your deal or your burden, but as the man who loves you. His voice trembled slightly, and I saw something raw flicker in his eyes. Vulnerability, the kind that money or power could never hide. For a long time, I just stood there. My heart pounded in my chest. Every memory, every wound, every stolen glance between us came rushing back. The pain, the longing, the way his voice softened when he said my name. I stepped forward, closing the distance between us. Ethan, I whispered, my voice shaking. I never stopped loving you. I tried to hate you, I really did. But I couldn't. Because somewhere between the lies and the truth, my heart chose you, even when it shouldn't have. He exhaled shakily, his shoulders trembling as he fought to hold back tears. Then give me one more chance, he whispered. Not to own you, just to love you. The rain began again outside, soft against the windows, the same sound that had brought him to my door all those months ago. I looked up at him, tears blurring my vision, and whispered, You already have it. He reached for me slowly, as if afraid I might disappear. His hands cupped my face gently, his thumbs brushing away the tears. Then he kissed me, not like the staged kisses from before, but like it was real, like he'd finally found the thing he'd been searching for his entire life. The world faded around us. The building that had once symbolized pain now echoed with the sound of something new, peace. When we finally broke apart, I rested my forehead against his. No contracts, I murmured. He smiled softly. No contracts. Months later, Ethan and I traveled often, balancing business with quiet weekends away from the noise. Sometimes we argued, sometimes we laughed, sometimes we just existed, messy and real, but together. One evening, while we walked along the river, he turned to me with a soft grin. You know, he said, buying your family's company was the worst decision I ever made. I raised an eyebrow. Really? He smirked. Yeah, because it made me realize no amount of money can buy what you gave me for free. I laughed, leaning against him. And what's that? He looked down at me, eyes gentle. A heart worth fighting for.